Dave here. Hold on to your socks, it's data quality, one of my favourite topics. When data is bad, it is worse than no data. Because when you've got no data, you can simply seek it out, but when data is bad, you've got to discover that there was a problem, you've got to work out the how, why, when it went wrong, you've got to source the correct data, you've got to update the bad data, and then repair any damage that could have been done from it, because reports could have been issued, business decisions could have been made, or a workflow could have moved through steps based on the bad data, and you might have to reverse it. And that's a really expensive process, and you want to avoid it. So taking the time to get it right is valuable. And then if you don't know about or misunderstand data quality, or you treat it frivolously, it can lead to that situation. And every organization in general has different data quality requirements, and then every type of data within that organization has different quality requirements. And as an example, in one organization, an incorrect phone number would not be as serious as an incorrect invoice amount. And between orgs, you could say that the exact specs of a spaceship matter a lot more than the exact specs of a model spaceship. So it is vital to understand how much the data quality matters to your organization and the areas of data where you work. So first thing is it has to be timely, which means that it's got to arrive and be entered in a timely fashion. And different data has different timeliness requirements. So results from a doctor, you would expect that to be measured in hours. You don't need it the moment you walk out of the doctor's office, but you wouldn't want to be waiting to the next day to get it. And issues logged to a call center, you would expect that to be accurate to the minute, because if you called up and then realized you forgot something and call again, you get a different person, it's not entered, you may get a duplicate issue created. And if you have an online order, you would expect that to be saved to the second, so that when you go to your orders, you can see that you've made the order. And the stock market is sub-second, that is as humanly fast as possible. So when data isn't timely enough, you can waste time with inquiries, you can create duplicates, you can oversell, and it can influence bad business decisions. So when you're a custodian, it's important that you understand how timely the data needs to be that you're working on. And when you're the designer of a system, it's got to be made so that it's as easy as possible to enter it in a timely manner. So something that's different but related to timeliness is how fresh data is, because it needs to be kept up to date, and it goes stale if it is not kept up to date. And some data is create only, and so it never becomes stale. That's less common, but it's things like events for access control to a building, entry and exit swipes, could be status history. In those cases, it's the timeliness that matters for them, because new records get created. And some data becomes stale faster than others. So if you've called up emergency services, keeping that data fresh is vitally important. Versus, say, if a product name changes, it probably doesn't matter too much. You can maybe take a day to update it. And so just like timeliness, of course, you need to make sure that you understand how fresh your data needs to be. Accuracy is when you have entered data with identical details to the real-world source of it. And that is relevant for every sort of entry. So if you're filling out an order page as a customer, you want that to be accurate, of course. If there's data entry from a paper form, that has to be accurate. And then when you're writing on that form yourself, it should be accurate. Some of it is easy to spot, like a spelling mistake, that could be quite easy to see. And others are quite difficult to spot, such as a date or a number that is out by a small amount. They may be very, very difficult to find, and they could cause serious problems. It creates rework when you've got to discover that there's a problem and fix it. There's ways you can guard against this, and that's with validation. So on a paper form, you've got the day, month, year as little boxes. That helps that you only write valid things in the right spot to get a valid date. And on a digital form, you want to make sure that, say, letters can't be typed into a number field. If it's a date, you want to make sure that if it's the date something happens, it's not in the future or in the distant past before the system was created. So when you design it, it is important that you make it as easy as possible to enter accurate data, guard against common problems. Now, related to accuracy is correctness, but it's different. And correctness doesn't describe that the data is entered identically, but that it represents the actual truth. So one area where a custodian may get correctness wrong, but it's not their fault, is if a patient is filling out a date of birth, but they filled it out incorrectly, then the custodian of the data would enter it accurately, but it's not correct. And so on that note, data can be inaccurate and incorrect, accurate but incorrect, incorrect but accurate, and of course the desired state is accurate and correct. So there is a problem here that you can use semantics to argue that one is the other, or the other is one, or that they're one together, or that it doesn't matter. But when you think about the concepts more simply, it can help you identify causes of bad data, because you can know, are the people typing it as it should be, or is the information just not correct? And then kind of related to them is that it needs to be verifiable as well, because if you can't verify it, it's ambiguous in terms of its correctness, its accuracy, and its freshness. And after data has been entered, it can go through validation processes where it turns into a state that's unverifiable but trusted. And that goes for, say, historical or archive systems, or data that's been moved into a reporting system. Because oftentimes those data can be abstracted a little from their source. And then if you've got holes in the process, or if there's carelessness, you can end up having data that can't be verified, that is bad data, and you want to avoid that at all costs. So if you're entering data and it might not be verifiable, it's probably a good idea to make a note about it so people know that this needs to be checked. An example could be if you're a doctor's office and there is a random intake form found, there's no way to verify anything about that, and that's a business decision about what do you do with it. Another case could be a pallet that arrives at a warehouse, but it doesn't have a label, doesn't have a docket, an invoice, order form, or anything else like that. That's also ambiguous, and there's no way to verify the accuracy or correctness of anything you might put in there. It should be available, because if it's not available, it's effectively missing. And you could create duplicate data, because if you can't see it, you might create it again. You might not be able to verify facts, and along with that, it could cause poor business decisions. So shadow data, that contributes to it. So if you've got a little personal spreadsheet no one knows about, that's data which is not available. And so when you're the designer of a system, it's very important to know how each bit of data should be available so that it can be appropriately seen after entering. And if you can cover shadow systems, that's even better. If you have unsecured data, it becomes ambiguous because you can't verify it, because you don't know if the state is correct and accurate. And if you know data was accessed by an unauthorized party, it suddenly becomes untrusted, and you need to find a way to roll it back or re-verify it or something like that. And the security comes both internally and externally. Internally, you still need access controls, because not all employees should be able to update the same data. And if one employee from one area updates data in another, they may not understand that system to enter the correct data. And externally, it's all very, very important, because if you say the customer on a store, you can only update your own data. So it's important then that you have processes in place to verify, validate, and test that the security is good on all of your systems. One way to guard is to keep logs and metadata, which tells you, when something was updated and by whom, and that can help you keep track access, and it can help give you confidence in your data. Final one is data anomaly, and that is when you have a delete, a create, or an update that causes unintended side effects to data in the system. So if a business system has a list of offices and you've got employees, but on the employee record you have the name of the office, when you update the office name, you may not update the name of the office that the employee is in. That one's a lot more technical, and that one is for designers only, and I will have a future video about that. Have fun thinking about data, and have yourself a good day.